Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our meeting of Monday, November the 8th. Today will be our Remembrance Day meeting, and because it is our Remembrance Day meeting, we do have a special guest speaker from the Royal Canadian Legion, Brian Harris. I will bring up his profile shortly, but Brian Harris is the Royal Canadian Legion Ontario Command Vice President and the Provincial Poppy Chairman. Brian first joined the Victory Legion number 317 here in London in 1986, and over the past 16 years, he has held positions at the branch, zone, district, and now Ontario Command. He's been elected or appointed to every post within the Legion except for Padre. In Niagara Falls in May of 2019, he was elected Vice President of Ontario Command and appointed Provincial Poppy Chair. He is responsible for oversight of the 393 legions in Ontario and their poppy operations. Brian enjoys his involvement in the Army Cadet League program, as well as Legion track and field. He is also passionate about the Legion's Leave the Streets Behind program, which transitions homeless veterans to permanent housing, as well as Operation Service Dogs, which matches veterans with PTSDs and other OSIs with service dogs. Brian recently retired after 36 years in the construction and industrial supply business. And we are going to start Brian's presentation with a short video clip.
100 years ago, an inspiring woman had a vision, a bright red poppy to honor veterans who lost their lives in the First World War and to help raise support funds to help others in the aftermath.
The idea was conceived by Madame Anna Guérin of France, sparked by John McCrae's poem In Flanders Fields. Anna had originally founded a charity to help rebuild war-torn regions of France after the First World War.
Poppies made of fabric were sold to help her charity. She presented the concept to France's allies, including the Great War Veterans Association in Canada, which later became the Royal Canadian Legion. The idea was adopted, and the poppy symbol made its first appearance in Canada on July 6, 1921, the year of the first poppy campaign to support our veterans. To mark the symbol's 100th anniversary in 2021, the Royal Canadian Legion produced a replica of the original fabric pin.
The familiar image has come to reflect the sacrifices of fallen Canadian veterans from all arms of the military and from all missions, including 2 world wars, Korea, Afghanistan, Bosnia, peacekeeping duties, and other assignments.
Canada's Parliament entrusted the Legion with the exclusive right to use the poppy as the nation's symbol of remembrance and to safeguard its image, a pledge it honors today.
100 years later, the symbol is unmistakable. Its meaning still deep.
The Poppy of Remembrance honors sacrifice. The Poppy of Remembrance cries, never again. The Poppy of Remembrance reflects solace and support.
Anna Guérin's vision lives on.
To learn more about how the Legion helps veterans, visit legion.ca.
We will pass the control over to yourself, Brian.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for the introduction. And good afternoon, Rotarians and comrades. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today for your Remembrance Day monthly meeting. And just want to go over a few things about the Royal Canadian Legion and also the poppy. And the first and most important thing to know about the poppy is the Royal Canadian Legion does not sell poppies. Anyone in Canada may have a poppy. We simply ask for a donation. Every year we distribute well over 20 million poppies, and the money we receive from those donations goes into a Poppy Trust account. It is held in public trust and is so governed by our regulations and also the regulations of the province that we operate in. The monies are used for very specific programs and items, and that almost 100% pertains to veterans, their spouses, and also their dependents. We do have some youth programs that are centered around Remembrance. The young lady you saw in the video, Shaylin, she is the national winner of our poster contest, and that is sponsored by the Poppy Trust Funds. Every year we hold a literary, poetry, and poster contest, and the national winners get their presentations displayed at the National War Museum. We also publish a Veterans Service Recognition book, and the winner of the poster contest, which Shaylin was for this past year, her submission goes onto the cover of the book. So the Poppy campaign covers youth right up to our most senior veterans. For those of us in London, and it's still surprising that a lot of people don't understand, we have one of the 3 veteran hospitals in all of Ontario here in London at Parkwood Institute. There's also Pearly Health in Ottawa and Sunnybrook in Toronto. Currently, we have about 140 veteran residents in the Veterans Care Program at Parkwood. And certainly the money that we raise through the Poppy campaign goes for their care. And just like any other program that the Royal Canadian Legion sponsors with the Poppy Trust Funds, this is picking up the gaps that their benefits don't cover, or covering that entire fund until we can advocate for them and get their benefits for them from Veterans Affairs. Every Legion branch in Canada has a veteran service officer. They have one mission, and that is to seek out, find veterans, liaison with them, make sure that they're getting all the benefits that they're entitled to. And also over the past several years, unfortunately, it's also the service veteran or the veteran service officer's duty to find homeless veterans and help them transition into a better situation. Here in Ontario, we have 2 major programs that the Poppy Trust Funds finance. First is called Leave the Streets Behind, where with our peer support workers and sometimes city or provincial agencies, we actually go out into the streets, go out into the woods, to abandoned facilities, find the individuals. If we identify them as veterans, then we get to work on A, getting them their benefits, and B, getting them a permanent home. And when we do that, we don't just get them in their home or their apartment and say, see you. We keep up the peer support. Veteran service officer stays intact. We have a provincial service officer, which happens to be located here in London, who also stays with that veteran. We get them peer support from organizations like London's Care and the OSI clinic at Parkwood. And we also help them with the issues that got them to the street. And it's a program that's for life. Once we find that veteran, we stay with them until their life improves. And fortunately, we've had many of these veterans that, shall we say, graduate from the Leave the Streets Behind program and start life on their own, reconnecting with family and friends and comrades. And quite often, those formerly homeless veterans become our peer support partners, helping other homeless veterans. The other major program we have in Ontario is Operation Service Dog. And we started this about 4 years ago in partnership with Wounded Warriors Canada. And we actually pay to raise the puppies, train the service dogs, primarily for PTSD, but there's other occupational stress injuries that we also train them for. And some of these dogs, depending on the training, cost up to $60,000. When we match them up with their veteran partner, it's paid for. And we also make sure that the veteran has the means to care for their animal and take care of them. And I've seen firsthand some of the partnerships with these dogs, who are just magnificent, brilliant animals, the smartest dogs you'll ever meet. And quite literally, it doesn't just change the veteran's life, it saves their life. And so that's some of the two major programs we have. And it's very gratifying. Recently here in London, in fact, right in the middle of the pandemic, we opened up Residenza Ortona on Hamilton Road. It was a 64-unit apartment building, and the developers worked with us, most kind, and gave us 10 units for homeless veterans. So we have our first 10 homeless veterans in London now housed at the Residenza Ortona. The apartments were completely furnished by Our Lady's Auxiliary. We paid their first and last month's rent, made sure they had insurance, made sure they had their benefits so they could sustain their apartments. They have a common room where we can meet, offer them peer support, and we're in there almost every day, and they have our phone numbers, and if they need us, we're there. So locally, for Londoners, that's where your poppy donations go to. As the video showed you, it is the 100th anniversary of the poppy in Canada. And with everything that's wrapped around COVID, especially last year and this year, those of us who were involved in the poppy campaign were very fearful that we would not have a successful campaign. I can tell you last year, it was very gratifying that we actually exceeded fundraising from the year before. So I think that goes to show that people in Ontario and people in Canada understand the good work that the Royal Canadian Legion does, and supports our poppy campaign. And to go hand in hand with the poppy campaign, we also have Remembrance Day, which will be on Thursday. And almost every municipality in Ontario, and certainly Canada, looks to their Royal Canadian Legion branch to either fully put on Remembrance Day services or at least assist the municipality. And that's our honor to do so, because when we were granted the right to trademark the poppy, we also took on the oath of Guardians of Remembrance. And that's where our youth campaigns come in, with the poster literary contest. And we try to keep with the youth what the poppy represents. Many years ago, many mistakenly thought it represented glorifying war. It does not. What it does is it represents remembrance and honor to those who served and are serving, and also who served and never came home. So in a very quick nutshell, that is what your Royal Canadian Legion does here in London. We have 5 branches. We have Donnybrook out in Dorchester. We have Lambeth. We have Byron Springbank. We have the Vimy branch, which is a virtual branch. They do not have a bricks and mortar. And we have the Victory Legion, which I'm proud to say I'm a member of. I could talk to you for hours about the Royal Canadian Legion and the poppy, but I realize you have other business to do. I appreciate very much the invitation to present to you today. If you have any questions or queries about the Royal Canadian Legion or the Poppy Remembrance Day, please reach out and contact any of the branches or myself. And in closing, I'd just like to say, please wear your poppy over your heart with pride. Please attend your Remembrance Day services. And also, when you see a member of our Canadian Armed Forces in uniform, thank them. Thank them genuinely for their service. And I will also extend that thank you to our RCMP, our police services, our firefighters, our other emergency responders. They deserve our wholehearted thank you. Thank you very much for letting me speak to you today. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you, John or Brian. We have a couple of members that have questions for you. Is that okay?
Uh-oh, I'll do my best.
I don't think they're going to be difficult questions. I'm pretty sure you can handle them, but we'll let Jerry go ahead first.
Hi, Brian. I have a question for you. I'm a regular volunteer with two local organizations that deal with homelessness. And just a couple of weeks ago, I met a gentleman on Dundas East, and he said he's a veteran. So first of all, of course, I don't know if he truly is, but bottom line is, where should I direct him to?
You can direct them to any Legion or an organization that works on behalf of the city called London Cares. And we have individuals who are vetted by Veterans Affairs who can take the personal information, verify their service. And if they are indeed a veteran, we can start to get them their benefits and hopefully get them off the street.
Okay. And the other one, about 2-3 months ago, I found out actually about the your facility behind Parkwood for the PTSD. How happy are you with it? Is it working for you guys? Is there a huge waiting list? Or briefly, if you can let me know about that one.
Well, are you speaking of the OSI clinic at Parkwood?
Yeah.
Yes. It is very busy. And unfortunately, many of our veterans, current and past, have occupational stress injuries. And it is busy. However, they do their very best to keep the waiting times to a minimum. It's almost like a triage type situation where the most critical in need are first served. And they do have enough staff to handle the workload. And I think it's working very well. I haven't heard of anyone, or I haven't had anyone come to us and say, we can't get in, they're not looking after our needs. So as far as I know, and I work closely with Parkwood Institute, I believe it's functioning well.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the next question is John Dactus.
Hi, Brian. Two things. One, I'm involved with shelters as well. I'm the executive director at Center of Hope. It wasn't long ago that the City of London proclaimed the first city in Canada to have no veterans that were homeless. Now, I know that kind of changes over time, but I think our numbers are pretty good in Canada compared to others in terms of that's been a real focus for the city here in terms of planning for veterans specifically. Wonder if you could speak to that maybe a bit. And secondly, I'm just curious, you talked about service dogs. Is there a specific type of dog that works best with PTSD, and where do you guys typically find the place in the areas that provide the service dogs for us?
Thank you for the questions, John. And number one, you probably know some of our people in our program. They work closely with all the shelters. The report that came out that said London was the first city in Canada to have zero veterans homelessness, I wasn't particularly happy with that report. What the report didn't say was we are not at zero veteran homelessness. We have the ability with the programs and networks and organizations like yours and the the relationship that we have with the City of London to eliminate veterans homelessness. To be honest, if and you would have a good idea of this, we probably still have 30, maybe upwards to 40 veterans living rough or living on the street, or what we call near homeless, which is couch surfing. So London has potential to eliminate veterans homelessness, but we're not quite there yet. Your second question in regards to service dogs, we work with Wounded Warriors Canada, and the reason why we formed that partnership was that the training standards for service dogs is really all over the place, depending on the organization you deal with. So we partnered with Wounded Warriors because they had a specific population in mind, and that was veterans. We have 4 different kennels that we use in Canada currently, 2 in Ontario, 1 in Quebec, and 1 in Nova Scotia. And as far as the breeds, I've seen actually several different breeds that that have been used as service dogs. However, probably half of the animals I've met have either been labs or shepherds. But I don't think there's probably breeds that perform better than others, but I don't think there's any standard as to, you know, which breed is better than the next. It really gets down to the individual animal and the training they receive.
Thanks, Brian. I'm glad you clarified that, because I've been wondering, knowing that in our shelter, you know, we do have some veterans every once in a while. So I'm glad you clarified that. Thank you.
Please reach out if you ever identify one, and let us know. We'll work with you, and we'll do our best to help them.
Yeah, we always do. Thanks.
I know.
Howard, I believe you have a question.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for
Howard
taking us this morning. So my question really you mentioned that the Poppy Fund last year had a very successful year, but we've seen on the news sometimes that some of the bricks and mortar legions have been really struggling through the pandemic. So, and some of them, their survival, I guess, is at stake. But if they start dropping off, is there a ripple effect then on the Legion, on the Poppy Fund, and then on the services that you provide to veterans?
Well, I'll give you an example that pertains to London. There was a 6th Legion in London, the Duchess of Kent, over on Hill Street. They amalgamated with my branch just as COVID was starting. It had nothing to do with COVID. It had to do with operations. When a Legion does close, 2 things happen. The funds that they have in their accounts by our regulations are distributed within that community. They don't go to a provincial fund or anything like that. The money raised in that community stays in that community. The second thing that happens that pertains to Poppy is the next closest branch, or branches, if they happen to be between a couple, divide up that Poppy territory to make sure there's the coverage. The unfortunate thing, like many of our organizations, is finding volunteers to cover that area. So what happens is you sometimes have the same amount of people doubling their workload, but you know, somehow we find a way to make that work. But in regards to branches closing because of COVID in Ontario, we've lost 2. There's other branches that have closed, and unfortunately one was relatively close to us, Rodney. There's other branches that COVID kind of pushed them towards amalgamating with another branch because that seemed inevitable because of lack of membership, lack of volunteers. That happens sometimes. And sometimes, and especially like in a city like London or Windsor, you know, back in the 80s, Windsor had 12 branches. Now they're down to 4. It's just that back in those times, it could support that many legions. Now it just doesn't.
We have a question from Rick.
Yes, thank you, Brian. I learned something new today about the Legion. I didn't realize that one of the services was service dogs, and I've had my wife and I have a pet, and we've had firsthand experience with a vet who lives in our condo community. He's a naval vet in his 90s. And still with a great mind on his shoulders, but still after more than 50 years suffering from PTSD as a result of his service in the Pacific War with Canada's Navy. And he's now working on his second service dog. He's outlived one full service dog. I'll identify the names of the dogs. I don't know if you've come across them. One he called Bosun's.
Yep. I know exactly who you're talking about.
And now he's training Beauregard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I was talking about that veteran the other day. I was wondering how Bosun was, because he was teamed with Bosun for a very long time.
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. He is training Beauregard because Beauregard still has a lot of puppy in him. And if the leash is dropped or that, Beauregard likes to sort of run around the community, a friendly dog, I mean, and then I won't identify my neighbor, but he calls for him. Oh, get back here, Beauregard. But it's wonderful. It's wonderful to know that that's one of the areas that our Royal Canadian Legion is involved with, because after more than 50 years, it's still suffering from PTSD. I imagine it's quite a struggle for these people.
But what people don't understand with PTSD, it can be managed, but it can't be cured.
Yeah.
It's a mental situation, and sometimes all that can help is a service dog or medication or peer support. And you talk about the service dogs. I had the good fortune about a month ago to meet 2 service dogs privately away from the convention I was at. And they're beautiful, intelligent animals. And the one veteran said, "Would you like to meet my service dog? Because you never interact with the service dog unless you're given permission." And I said, "That would be great." And all she did was said, "Greet." And that dog hugged me and slobbered me like crazy. And then she gave another command and it laid down and went back to be a service dog. But at night, when they take the vest off, they become a dog. They know their work is done and they get to be a dog or a puppy again. They're wonderful animals.
Okay, next question is from Jack Scott.
Thanks, Don. Thank you, Brian, for your presentation. In our breakout room before we joined the whole group, there were a couple of questions asked about the Poppy Fund. You've answered many of them, but there was one we've read in the media, as has been commented about, the difficulty in raising sufficient funds to support our veterans. And the comment was made during this COVID situation, many people don't have an opportunity to get out into the businesses where the Poppy boxes are located in order to make their donation. I was wondering if you might share with everyone here the alternate ways. I know there are a couple on legion.ca where people could donate to the Poppy Fund and be able to assist the Legion in their good works.
Yes. And thanks for bringing that up, Jack. There are several ways you can donate. Of course, there's our traditional Poppy box. We started a program last year called Tap Tribute, where if you don't have any cash on you, you can simply tap your debit or credit card. And where that program will grow and grow more over the years. It won't replace the traditional Poppy box, but it'll certainly augment it. You can go online. Many branches now have a donate button. And also you can go on the Dominion site and there is a donate button. And those funds do get streamed down to the local branch. A lot of people don't want to donate to a national organization because they think the money stays in a big pot. But it does take a few months after the Poppy campaign, but those funds are streamed down to the local branches. And being the Ontario Poppy Chair, I watch Dominion very closely, and I make sure our branches, I don't care if it's $2 or $200. I make sure that the branches gets what's coming to them so they can support their local programs. That was a great question, Jack. Thank you.
I think we have time for one last question, which I believe is Jim Swan.
Jim. How are you, Jim?
Very well, Brian. I think some of us might be a little bit surprised to learn that 50 years later, a veteran is still coping with PTSD. I wonder if the programs extend to assist the families of those veterans who are also affected by that veteran's PTSD, and in helping them both cope with that themselves and assist the veteran. Do the programs extend into the family?
That's a great question, Jim. And they do. When we at the Legion say veteran, that also means their spouse and their dependents. And when you get to a situation like service dogs, not everyone's friendly with dogs. So if the veteran needs a service dog identified that this could help, perhaps their spouse is not, is afraid of dogs. And this has happened before. And but at the OSI clinic, there's direct support for the veteran. There's also support for the family. So there's a number of programs that is veteran specific and then family specific. Because take, for instance, the war in Afghanistan, so many young men and women going into battle and coming back with PTSD. These are individuals with young families. It of course affects the spouse and their children, and things can escalate very badly, very quickly. So all those things are in place, but sometimes, unfortunately, the veteran won't seek help or identify that they need help. And as I said a while ago, no one goes into an OSI clinic and comes out sometime later and they say, you're cured, you don't have PTSD anymore, because it's in the mind, and things can, for lack of a better word, trigger that, and it can reappear again. And it can be such a downward spiral. Just about everyone in our homeless veterans program suffers from some kind of OSI, and it's constant peer support. And only when we have the trust of the veteran, which is probably the hardest part of this program, is getting their trust, especially if they're talking to someone like me who is not a veteran. I have veterans in my family, so I understand a very small percentage, but you have to gain their trust and then have them willing to seek help. But many of these veterans, came back from World War II and maybe didn't realize or acknowledge they had a problem till maybe, the 60s or 70s, when, possibly so much damage was done. They've lost their families, alienated themselves. So it is unfortunate, but it's a part of the condition of PTSD and OSIs, that there really is no cure. There's only help and support.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Brian, for your presentation today. And in recognition of your presentation to the Rotary Club of London, a contribution has been made to the Polio Plus campaign of the Rotary Foundation to immunize 50 infants against polio. Because of you, Rotary is one step closer to a polio-free world. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I appreciate Rotary International. I know many of you are also comrades of the Legion. It was an honor to speak to you today. I welcome the invitation, And I wish you
Peacekeeping duties
good luck in
and
your work.
Thank you. Now we will continue with short presentations from a couple of our members. And I think we'll start with Keith Morrow. You wanted to do a quick introduction and story.
Okay. This is a mom. I'm looking at my mother with her brother. Mom, at 18 years old, entered service with the Royal Canadian Air Force as a standard tradeswoman, equipment assistant, and ended up basically a general clerk. Back in the days, you could probably imagine one-room rural schoolhouse didn't get you much education, and the Army taught our general clerking and typing and such to work at the Jarvis Bombing and Gunnery School, training air crews for the Royal Canadian Air Force. At 18 years old, in January of 43, she entered service. And that is her brother Norman on the right, who was in the infantry. He eventually did grow into his ears, I think. He was at Camp Borden and turned out to be such a do-it-yourself, can fix anything farm boy. Though he volunteered to go overseas, the commander of the base talked him into staying in Canada and being the general repair guy at the base, which to his wife at the time was a great relief. That family is one son and three daughters, and my Aunt Mary's husband, Bob Hind, was in service, and Norm Huxley there, his wife, Ethel, actually lost her brother in the air crews in Europe. The handsome dude there on the right is Sergeant Fred Morrow. I'm sure everybody can see the family resemblance to me. Fred, at the tender age of 19, in April of 41, entered service in London. He was overseas in October of 41. He did touch Europe for just a very short period of time in 45. He was mainly a tradesman in the motor pool, always a very mechanical guy growing up on a farm. He is one of 7 sons in the family, and sure you can appreciate Grandma Morrow having 3 sons in service. It was a long wait that everybody returned safely. So 2 Morrow sons of my grandmother in the Army and 1 in the Navy. And seems like a fitting place for somebody born in Saskatchewan to join the Canadian Navy and see the world. Anyway, my father returned to Canada, was discharged in October 45, and recorded a total of 54 months total service in the Army.
Thank you. And next we will pass over to Don Stevens. If I can, there we are.
Thank you. My father, Ed Stevens, went into the war at 22 years old, newly married. He was a tradesman in Toronto, and he went in as a tank mechanic, looking after the tanks you could see there on the page. He went on D-Day, landed at 8 o'clock in the morning. You have a picture there of the center of at the beach, where they landed, and a picture down below of some of the things. The picture at the bottom is a picture of my dad with my brother before he went overseas. He served for a few months out in Prince George, helping build radar lines up the west coast of Canada. Then he went overseas, fought for 3 years, went in D-Day, survived that. It wasn't great, but he survived it. He did have some minor injuries, but basically told me that there were no good days in the Army. He slept under the tank for 3 years on the wet ground. He really didn't make any friends. When he came home, I never once met any of his buddies from the Army, never heard any stories until 40 years after D-Day when he told us a wee bit about it. They raised funds to build the center on the beach by selling little plaques commemorating the people who served. And in the front of the beach, there's pillars where these plaques are put. And so there's my dad's plaque showing that how he served and when he landed. But he came home and lived a good life afterwards, but totally thought of the 4 or 5 years he was away as just being one of those things you had to do.
Thank you.
Oh, a picture, by the way, of my dad getting a Paul Harris Fellow for myself and Loretta in when I was president, honoring his work as what he's done in his life.
And another quick announcement, a reminder, Remembrance Day ceremonies this year. Participation at the London Cenotaph is once again by invitation only, and there will not be a parade this year. Spectators are discouraged from attending because of the health restrictions and the requirement to physically distance. However, you can watch the London Remembrance Day ceremony starting at 10:45 a.m. on both Rogers TV and CTV London.
I'd like to just add that it will also be carried on CFPL Radio AM. They will be carrying it as well.
Thank you. And I will now pass over control to Rick Coates for a report from the Nominating Committee.
Thank you very much, President Don. The Nominating Committee has met over the last 2 weeks to identify a slate to be elected for our next board. I want to thank the members of the committee, besides myself, Don Stevens, Diane Twinstra, Steve Knox, and Jack Scott. As you can see, all of those members are past presidents of our club, which is how the nominating committee is to be constituted. Do you want to move to the next slide, please, Don? Okay, our charge this year was to deal with the proposed new board structure as well, because that's flowing out of the strategic plan. And as we speak, there is our secretary, Jim Belton, and a few others that have been assisting him are updating and amending our bylaws and our constitution to reflect the desires and the conclusions reached in the strategic plan. And so one of those objectives was to reorganize our board and to reduce the size from 16 to 10 members. So the new board going forward, effective July 1st, this assumes that it will be passed at our AGM on November 29th, will be a president-elect, the past president, a secretary, a treasurer, and 4 directors from the Rotary Club of London, 2 directors elected each year to serve 2-year terms, and 1 satellite club member. Next slide, please. So here are the nominees from the nominating committee. President-elect John Finan to serve 1 year as president-elect and then 1 year as president of the club. Secretary Jim Belton to serve 1 year. Treasurer Keith Morrow to serve 1 year. Director Julie Pontus to serve 2 years, and Director Sharad Ray to serve 2 years. This year we are electing 2 directors, and then right now there are 4 directors that are charged to serve until June 30th, 2023, but one of them has already agreed to step down, and we will be talking amongst the other 3 to see which one will volunteer to decide to retire as of June 30th, 2022, so that we get everything in balance with the new board structure. Next slide, please, Don. Now, our club bylaws also offer the opportunity for nominations from the general membership. So as of today, the official announcement is going out that in the next 5 days, any active member, any active members, I should say, that are not a member of the nominating committee may make further nominations, provided that such nominations are made in writing and delivered to the club secretary, that would be Jim Belton, by noon Saturday, November the 13th. So we still are open for other nominations if there is any desire for those, and they require 5 active members to sign the nomination and deliver it to Jim Belton in the next 5 days. No one active member of the club shall sign more than 4 such nominations. And any nominations so received will be announced at our next regular meeting on Monday, November the 15th. Are there any questions at this time? I will also send out a club runner notice with the report so that everybody has it and can review it again. Thank you.
Past President Diane is unable to join us today, but she did ask me to remind everyone that nominations are still open for the Honorable Ray Lawson Rotarian of the Year Award. And a reminder, once again, that is open to all members of the club, except for last year's board of directors or previous recipients of the reward. The nomination form is on the website, and you just have to send the completed nomination form to Past President Diane. And I believe that is all the announcements I'm aware of. Are there any other announcements for the club? And we will wrap up the meeting with just a few reminders of what is happening over the next couple of weeks in our club. Our meeting next week will be Larch London. I did know last night who was speaking at the Satellite Club meeting next week, but I forgot to write it down last night, and my memory has now failed me. We do have a board meeting next week as well on Wednesday the 17th at 5 p.m. And as always, we will have cocktail hour tomorrow at 5 p.m. and coffee clutch Thursday at 10:30 a.m. And a reminder that we in Rotary serve to change lives, and please go out there and change people's lives this week. Thank you very much.